try to understand the universe. Think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Hello, welcome to the Unblocked Creators Podcast. Today's guest is very exciting. Dan Coe, ladies and gentlemen, is a big influence on my work. This podcast probably wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for what he inspired in me. And I can say the same for a lot of creators I know. He's the thinker behind the 2-Hour Writer, a system that has helped a lot of people get started creating content online, and the philosophy of the 4-hour workday has made him millions of dollars per year by the time he was in his mid-20s. So we have a lot to talk about. Mr. Coe, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me, dude. Thanks for coming out here.
Absolutely.
We're in AZ.
Yeah, I love it in Arizona, and I like escaping the Canadian winter.
Yeah, so I could imagine.
I'm going to start with a question you've asked a lot of your early podcast guests when you did the co-cast more often. Can you summarize your current life philosophy in a sentence?
I know you expect me to say work less, earn more, enjoy life. That's like the headline of my website. That's kind of what shaped a lot of my content for a long time. But the more I actually think about it, I think a good philosophy for me to have that illustrates my philosophy, like in practice, when I observe what I do, it's no philosophy. It's just no labels. And if I find myself acting within a label, use that as a tool to do whatever I'm trying to do, but realize that that could limit further growth to some extent.
Right. Not sticking to it to a degree that's not iterable. So, okay. I wasn't necessarily expecting that answer because I know you're an evolving person,
Okay.
but it was your bio for a long time was work less, earn more, enjoy life. I would like to break that down a little bit because those three things I think are seen as sort of at odds with each other. And so it starts with work less.
Mhm.
So the 4-hour workday. You talk a bit about it as partly a frame for your perception, making a goal like that. And why would it be an intelligent goal to work for 4 hours a day?
I mean, there's various studies. The thing that made me want to start doing that in the first place was just hearing that the sweet spot for focus is around 4 to 6 hours a day. And of course, when I was a kid, when I heard the word work, I always assumed some kind of job that I didn't want to have, right? Because growing up, the only people that I observed or was exposed to were people who didn't seem very happy with their lives. And that wasn't them saying it directly. It was just me observing them, what they do. It didn't seem like a life that I wanted to live. So I'm like, work less. Like, I need to do something that allows me to create my own schedule. And when I looked to people who had that kind of life, which came to me from starting to watch YouTube when I was in like high school and was getting into the gym, the fitness creators of that time were my role models to an extent, and they were doing something that they enjoyed. And I started to put the pieces together of how much I earn doesn't need to be tied to the time spent doing a specific task. And then the next 5 to 6 years was like of college, and everything else was just spent experimenting, hoping that some kind of business model or interest that I was learning would pick up in some way. But in terms of work less, it's kind of that. Do you have questions before I keep rambling?
Well, we'll move to the next two parts, earn more and enjoy life. But you can ramble more on working less if you'd like. There's quite a bit there.
There is quite a bit. So in terms of the 4-hour workday, that was kind of just a concept that came from the 4-hour work week from Tim Ferriss. But when I put the two together of, the sweet spot for focus is 4 hours a day, I've noticed that. I've noticed that if I work intelligently on the right tasks in the morning, I can achieve a deep flow state doing that. Now, okay, I'm working with this concept, the 4-hour work day. I'm a writer. I need to turn that into something useful. And I really started to think about it. It's not about just working 4 hours a day every single day. It's more of a constraint that helps you prioritize tasks in a meaningful way. The way that I think about it is if you can't move the needle toward your goal in 4 hours, then you're either doing something wrong or you're not focusing on the right thing, or things can be outsourced. So that 4-hour limit became a metric for me of, okay, if I have to work more than this consistently, not just on a one-off sprint towards a project where I'm working much longer, then I need to look into outsourcing it or really scrutinizing what I'm doing and seeing if those things are actually relevant or moving the needle, or if I've just become distracted. And the last part there, it plays into identity. When you identify as a person who works 4 hours a day, anything over that kind of becomes a threat to an extent, and you feel like you need to optimize how you're working. So that's the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of technical details or going into it further, the way that I like to think about how to structure my day or how to be more productive is it's with the concept of entropy, but applied to like your daily tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And you can think of low entropy tasks in the morning as being something where it's just you and the work. It's you and the highest priority task. It's not messaging people on Slack. It's not looking at your phone. It's not scrolling on social media for inspiration even, because that just puts a bunch of things in your brain that don't need to be there and aren't going to contribute to the main priority task. And then as you move forward, hour by hour, you can start to introduce more of those tasks until after the 4-hour work block, where you feel like you've done a good days of work. Then it matters how distracted or disoriented you are, but it matters much less because your priority tasks that move you toward your goal are done.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense, and kind of makes me think about the different mentality that people tend to have when they are working a job and trading time for a wage. Often, if your best ability to focus is kind of constrained to 4 hours, but you're expected to work for 8, you're not going to contribute your best.
Yeah.
So it's a weird dynamic, and that does take us to earn more, the second part of that, because people are mostly accustomed to the idea that you trade an hour for a certain amount, and it's not a very large amount. So then when people explore entrepreneurship and wanting to make more money, there's often a lot of resistance to the idea of being motivated by profit. So maybe we could talk about what is the mentality behind not seeing profit as a reasonable motive, and how can people see it more positively?
Yeah, I mean, to preface the earn more thing compared to work less, I feel like there's still a lot of residue from industrialization, and the internet and AI haven't fully changed people's minds on that. It hasn't been here long enough to be like the default operating state that we're born into, so to say. But it's the difference between like hourly value model, getting paid per hour, and just getting paid based on the value you provide, right? And that can be very different. And how do I put this? In terms of people thinking money is bad or that profit isn't something to pursue, I think that's something people need to question more in their own time, because when I think about that and when I see other people saying it, they're usually just saying it to say it. It's some kind of defense mechanism that they're using to not look deeper into that situation or into that topic. But the reason I like earning more, so to say, is because it gives me more opportunities to impact more people, as one thing. I'm not going to act like I'm a super saint. I obviously like money. I like buying things. I think more people need to be okay with that. Who
Yeah.
doesn't like that? And money is just how you survive in today's world. Like you maybe not for so long, maybe money will eventually not be a thing in the near to far future. But for now, in order to live a decent life and not have so much stress in your mind that you can't discover new ideas or be creative to any major extent, you need to make some kind of money, plain and simple. But how that's where the philosophy starts to form is like, okay, well, how are you going to work less and earn more? A lot of people don't want to come to this, but usually it involves building your own thing. And all of those things, the work less, earn more, enjoy life, is like the triad in my eyes, at least in my life too, for living a meaningful and enjoyable life.
Yeah. And so we can talk about what doing your own thing means at various stages for different people, how to approach that. The third part there with work less, earn more is enjoy life. So what comes to mind for me is, on the one hand, some people might say, well, to enjoy life, you do what makes you happy. And something I've heard you say is your goals are the axis of your suffering.
Mhm.
So what does it mean to enjoy life? And what's the role of happiness and suffering in that?
Yes. So let's look at that philosophy, work less, earn more, enjoy life, as like a practical philosophy. In that case, it's a lifestyle. So it's something you do every day. The way that I try to do that is to build something meaningful and earn from that thing so I can sustain my efforts in doing that. I can do that for a long time because it's sustains itself. It makes money so that I can survive, so that I can pour more into doing that, right? It's like there's like a Walt Disney quote where it's like, at the start you create to make money, at the end you make money to create. And so it's kind of that. You're trying to get to the point of making money from the thing so you can do more of that thing. And that alone brings enjoyment to an extent. The way I look at enjoyment compared to happiness and why I think it's a better metric to pursue is it comes from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, flow psychology, flow state in general, that very enjoyable state of mind that kind of exists on a spectrum. And the thing about happiness is that I think a lot of people mistake happiness for euphoria, at least right now. It's like, I'm not happy because I'm bored. But boredom can be very enjoyable. And so they try to be happy by doing something that brings them back to a state of euphoria that they associated with happiness. So that could be scrolling on their phone until they reach a meme that makes them laugh, and then they get stuck in that loop, which we all do, but that's not happiness. It could be the time they remembered of going out to a concert and getting drunk or doing drugs or whatever it may be. And it's like they're trying to get back to that highest moment when we can obviously see that's going to lead to some kind of destructive cycle. So if you refocus on enjoyment and study something like flow psychology, then that's something you can replicate in your life and really integrate into your work.
Yeah. I like it. So your means of doing so has been building a personal brand. You've become very well known for the idea of the one-person business model. And your main driver has been writing. So I'd like to go into the future of writing and authorship in the age of AI and all of that. But could we start with, how did you land on writing as the primary fuel of your brand? And when did writing begin for you? What was your early experience with writing?
Yeah. Where writing began for me was just with Twitter, which is kind of weird. And the way that I got to Twitter was kind of what I mentioned before, of I was trying all of these different things because I knew that I had to do my own thing if I wanted to control my lifestyle and my means of survival, money, and therefore my enjoyment in life, then I experimented with a bunch of different business models that were coming up. I was researching them. It spanned everything from drop shipping, e-commerce stores, agency work, drop servicing, just kind of like you create an agency, and then when you get a client, you outsource that client to like Fiverr, and then they deliver the work, but you have to have an agency that does such simple work that it can be automated in that way. I studied web design, all of these other different things. I worked a job in web design, and while I was at that job, I was trying to get out of it by freelancing with web design. Once that started to pick up steam, then when I was on Twitter, I noticed that other people were talking about web design and other interests of mine. And when I was reading over those, I was like, okay, I get it. I see what you're saying. I can write this stuff too. Why can't I grow to the level that they're at minimum, and if not more? And once I realized that, I started to look deeper into like, oh, there's these people with like millions of followers, and they're just posting stuff that I could post. And since I had tried all of these different business models, I had a surface level understanding of many different skills, from design to branding to copywriting to some extent. I wasn't an expert by any means, but the combination of those allowed me to get into the personal brand or social media world, because it requires some extent of all of those things. You need a good looking profile picture. Writing tweets is kind of like writing copy, just you're not trying to convert people to buy an actual product. You're just trying to get them to engage and share your work. And sometimes converting to go and look at the landing page or subscribe to your newsletter or even purchase a product. But that's where I started writing. It was very short form. And then everyone told me that I needed a newsletter. So I started writing that, but it sucked at first and I didn't know what I was doing. I remember vividly sitting in my room looking at a screen with like one paragraph. Have you seen SpongeBob where he spends like 12 hours writing the T of the, it felt exactly like that. And my brain couldn't process the words to put on the paper. And I don't really know what happened along the way, but I think I just kept doing it. And eventually now words just come to me when I'm trying to write. So it's a testament to push through the part that sucks. But that's how I was introduced to writing.
So then how did that become clear as, a little more context would also be, you're known for the phrase, you are the niche. Hey, I'm pausing the episode for just a moment to tell you of very exciting news. See, while most creators are just a few conversations away from breaking through, they're stuck building in isolation, right? Maybe you're posting consistently, you're creating good work, but you're not sure if you're building something that becomes a valuable offer, or you don't know how to get the leverage to monetize. Well, what I've seen in the creators who do break through, they didn't do it in isolation. They got in the same rooms as the people who were trying to solve the same problems as them or who already have. So, we're launching the Future Proof Creator Summit in Vancouver, Canada this June. There are 600 seats at the Sheraton Vancouver Airport Hotel. The speaker list includes Dan Coe himself, Kieran Drew, the ex-dentist who's built a $500,000 a year writing business online, Taylin Simmons, whose ghostwriting brand has generated over 2 billion impressions, plus more than 10 other proven builders who are going to help you get clear on your offer, build and monetize a magnetic brand. So you're going to walk out of this weekend with 5 to 10 genuine connections who become your accountability partners, your future co-founders, your mentors, your clients, and your friends. You'll create a 90-day action plan and have the support to follow through on it. So secure your spot now at thelivinginternet.com, and we'll see you this June in person in Vancouver, Canada. All right, back to the episode. You're known for the phrase, you are the niche.
Mhm.
And so you talk about a lot of things. You draw from a lot of philosophical ideas. You draw from some scientific ideas. And someone might say writing in some sense is your niche. Like it's the main thing. So how did you narrow in on that kind of as your primary selling point too, right? Like persuading people to start writing in the context of understanding this idea that you are the niche.
Yes. It's honestly hard to remember how I formulated that. I'm sure other people have said you are the niche before me, but the way, I don't know the way that I came to that. What I do know is that like people would say that my niche is writing, or they would say that my niche was web design when I was selling that as a service. But if you look at my content and my tweets right now, I would argue that actually all of my content over time, maybe 1% or less, is on the topic of writing. So then to me, that doesn't sound like I'm niching down. And so then I question, like, is that useful advice to give to other people? Because I'm not doing it. And I didn't see success with it. And I don't think it's a way to go. I don't think it's a fulfilling way to go for many reasons that we can get into if we want. But when I say you are the niche, it stems from leaning into what your edge actually is. And that's your point of view or your frame or how you make sense of the world or how you translate, how you curate and translate ideas that you pick up and want to post under your specific brand, right? People aren't following you as a personal brand because they want to learn about writing, so to say. I would argue that most people that follow me don't follow me for that. It's something that I introduce them to. It's something of, hey, you like this topic that I'm talking about? Let me bridge into why writing is an important skill that you may benefit from, because you could be a person that's not in the career or job that they want to be in. So why don't you try writing? And then that sometimes is enough persuasion to get them to try to our writer or just implement it or try it. And some see results, some don't. For some, it's a fit. For others, it's not.
Yep. Yeah, writing has been big for me. I had some teachers and mentors encourage me in that direction. And when I discovered your content, it sort of clicked for me that social media is a tool for all of this stuff. And I had resistance to the idea, although I thought about doing a podcast eventually. I had resistance to the idea of like really leveraging social media, partly because I was consuming it in a way that wasn't, well, it was varied. Some educational stuff and some scrolling, right? So
Yeah.
Plenty of scrolling. But you convinced me through your material to start a newsletter. But I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for what you said about finding the convergence of your many interests. So I did like a tree of interests. I'm like, oh, I'm a woodworker, a carver. I'm interested in psychology. I'm interested in like art therapy. I'm interested in art in general, creativity. I'm interested in Zen. And then it struck me, I was thinking about the Zen idea of the uncarved block, which represents unmanifest potential. And, oh, I'm the unblocked carver. So I flipped it and I started writing, and things just started coming together in a meaningful way. Like, oh, I can write about Zen and wood carving and like healing. And that was my first newsletter in essence. And
That's one thing I will say. It's a lot easier to make sense of you are the niche or combining multiple interests with something longer form. So if you're a YouTuber or a newsletter writer, or you specifically focus on threads on Twitter or something else of that nature, it's harder to do in short form tweets, because when you're writing one tweet, you're usually focused on one topic, one idea. But over time, those ideas overlap and intertwine. I'm actually writing a newsletter on like why having multiple interests is one of your greatest advantages right now. And I'll leave the topic of specialists and generalists aside. But the key point that I'm trying to get at with that letter is that you need a vessel to channel those interests into. Otherwise, that's when all of the problems start to come up. That's when you get stuck in tutorial hell. That's when you feel like you have shiny object syndrome because you feel like you're not making very much progress. You love learning things. You love going down these curiosity rabbit holes, but they're not leading to much. So you feel like you're wasting your time. And it doesn't help that society makes people feel like multiple interests is a weakness because, I mean, my parents, I don't know about your parents, many parents in the world, if you say that you're not going to go to school and not get a high-paying job or whatever it is, then they're going to look at you weird. Some may be like, no, you absolutely have to do that. Mm-hmm. And others may just be like, he's a lost cause. And so then it's like you have all of this pressure on you to do one thing when I don't think that's the right way to go, especially going into the age of AI where it's easier, or maybe the second renaissance, so to say. You have this incredible tool to learn faster, to help you do things that aren't your craft, but are necessary for being able to sustain your craft. As an example, if I want to do more writing, I could outsource my writing to AI and it would suffer because of that. But that's the thing I want to spend my time on. So I could outsource marketing to some extent and be more of an editor or director of that thing. Mm-hmm. I could outsource many other things because as a one-person business or as a business in general, you have many more departments that you have to cover that aren't just content or writing. There's sales, so on and so forth. I'm rambling.
Well, you said you're going to set aside for now the generalist versus specialist topic, but we've talked about AI quite a bit, you and I. And we first met in person a year ago when I was on one of these desert adventures of mine. And I was working on a newsletter investigating the role of human creativity as potentially AGI emerges. And our conversation helped me finish that newsletter. And I was thinking about what's the difference between artificial intelligence, which is at root computing its calculations. It's binary code, and it is very tricky. It looks like it knows language, and in some sense it does. It analyzes our language patterns so deeply that it's like it's reflecting our intelligence, but very, very, very fast, and all the other stuff. But as this progresses, how do you think we are going to be engaging with the economy as machines take over more specialized labor? What is left for humans to do that's of value?
Oh, that's a difficult one to answer. I don't, nobody knows that. I know that some form of meaning economy will exist to some extent, right? I guess this all depends on what predictive model you subscribe to, of what's going to happen in the future. Mm-hmm. But if we're assuming that money is still kind of a thing, value exchange is still a thing, which I guess is an important distinction because value exchange doesn't necessarily have to tie to money as the dollar. It has to tie to what I think is a part of human nature, and a part of what generates meaning is helping another person in exchange for something else. It's mutual benefit in a small tribe to a nation to whatever it could be. I think there's going to be some kind of meaning economy, and that's what I'm focused on, primarily because I don't think eternal retirement is something that I would ever strive toward, right? I couldn't see myself sitting in a room and writing to nobody all day. There's no value in that because I'm not providing value and getting feedback from another person. I don't feel like I'm contributing anything. The same thing goes with art. Like I'm sure in the future, if UBI is a thing and other supplemental income is a thing, and you're fine. Like you don't have to worry about money. Your survival needs are solved. You can sit around and do art all day. But for me personally, that's just, I would do something else. Like if I don't have to do anything and I don't have some kind of meaningful work that I can do, then I'd probably go back. Well, one, I'd either get depressed and just stay inside all day and get fat and all these other things that I don't want to do. Because I wouldn't have a reason to do those things. Like, yeah, you can do them for health, but we do things for more than one reason. Aside from that, I feel like I would try to bring back what my childhood was, where I'm just going out and adventuring with my friends and I'm doing cool things because I don't have any other worries in the world or responsibilities. But responsibility is also something that generates meaning. So that comes into play too. With the meaning economy, it's going to be about doing the things that you care about and help and providing that to some kind of community. Could be a small scale community. It could be, I see it as like the evolution of the creator economy, because the creator economy right now is I'm doing something that I enjoy doing. I am kind of participating in this economy by providing a good that helps people learn what I'm good at. Other people are providing, let's take one of the ancestral fitness people where they're all about sunlight and specific diets and not wearing polyester clothing or drinking from plastic water bottles. But they sell physical products like clothes that match their beliefs and values, and they attract people with the same values or that align with the same vision or mission. And they support each other, right? This guy provides the clothes. This guy provides the blue light glasses. Another person provides packs of frozen grass-fed beef from their local farm that they ship to the people that buy from them. So things like that, to an extent, is where I see things going.
Okay. So you talk a lot from a more meta level, instead of telling people this is the skill or that's the skill that's going to be of value, because like you said, we really don't know as things are changing so fast. And you talk a lot about developing agency, and people define it in kind of a variety of ways, but I would say partly it's about creativity. It's about tapping into your creative power to live the life you want to live. What do you think are the main barriers that people have to developing agency?
I kind of want to spin that back on you. Have you thought about that? Because if you provide like a string of thought there, I'll be able to add on. Because I have a few things that are pulling at me in my head.
Okay.
But I'm curious.
Yeah. So one of the things I would say is that the less I know what I do and don't want out of life, the more I'm inclined to just take sort of the path of least resistance and do what compels my interest. And Terrence McKenna said, if you don't have a plan, you're part of somebody else's plan.
Yeah, I've said similar. That's funny that he said that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a universal thing. Okay. I get where you're going. So it helps to define like what low agency looks like and what high agency looks like. So low agency looks like just conformity across the board, right? You are born. All you know is what your parents taught you or passed off to you. What they passed off or taught to you usually comes from their culture, their values, their parents, the schooling that they had. If they didn't have high agency traits, then they're kind of the product of their environment to an extent. So they didn't really question that. And that's kind of like generational knowledge passed down. And then once it reaches you, if you don't, that's just going to happen when you're a kid. It's kind of just the education and learning process and learning how to survive. But as you get older, as you get wiser, as you start to realize, I don't want to live the same life as everyone else, I have to do something of my own, that's where like the shift into becoming high agency becomes a thing. In terms of developing agency, how do I put it? It's a difficult thing to do because I haven't really dissected how it happened in my own life. Aside from when I was a kid, I was just like dead set on avoiding the default path. I had to really step back and think and question, if I keep doing the same things or I do the things that are wanted of me, what is my life going to look like in 10 years? What is it going to look like in 20 years? Mm-hmm. How about 30 years? And I didn't like that picture because I could see it right next to me. I could see it when I go to the store and just look at the average person. No offense to them, but it's like, that's not what I want to do. And so when I really realized that, when I really became aware of it, it didn't happen in an instant. Like I wasn't just a super hyper-productive person that would sit down and do deep work for 4 hours every morning on the exact right tasks. It just kind of sat with me and nagged at me, and it framed my attention. So when I did go to college and I heard about this business model online, and I'm like, maybe I should try that. And then I did try it, but I only stuck with it for 2 weeks, and then I went back to how I was. And then if I go even further into, okay, now I'm going to start this YouTube fitness channel and do food challenges because I see other people doing it, which is still a form of conformity because I'm doing the same thing as someone else. It's imitation to an extent, but it's not the path that I was set on. And it's also not, it's me making my own decision to do that thing. And then as time went on, it just came from experimentation, putting one foot out into the unknown and then letting that become known, and then taking the next step, letting that become known, and slowly expanding that map that I could then navigate. And every step I took was kind of like me solidifying this extra branch in my worldview that once all of those branches grew, now I could see all of these new opportunities. Like the apples would start to grow on the tree and I could pick them because I had the valid experience that allowed me to pick them. Like in a video game, when you start off, you kind of have to do the tutorial. You're told what to do, you're taught, so on and so forth. At level 1, you don't have many options. You just get to like kill little wolves, level 1 wolves. And then you get these crappy pair of leather boots. And then you level up and then you unlock dungeons. And then those are fun. And then you unlock flying. And now you can fly to a certain location. And then you get this crazy gear and you get to design how you look and how you want to act in that world. And once you get to level 99, you can practically do anything. Like the world is your oyster. You can even stop playing that character and start from scratch, right? So that's kind of how I see it, is just the more experience you have in your own direction, on your own storyline, over time, the more it just becomes a part of you, because it's not just like, ooh, I flip on high agency one day and now I'm a cool high agency person that now when I read a tweet from a startup CEO, I feel good about myself.
Yeah. So it's sort of like it's an iterative part of your identity in a way, where sometimes it's new skills that you acquire that give you more options to decide how you're going to act, what you're going to do. So a lot seems to come down to identity, and not just living out the identity that we were conditioned to live out, playing that character. So people listening are probably looking to have more freedom in their life, maybe earn more, work less, etc. If people are trying to figure out how to begin on the digital entrepreneurship path, there's a lot of overwhelm around the different models of, like you said, there's a lot of business models you tried. And then when it comes to creating a digital product, for example, you can build courses, you can run cohorts, you can build a community. You've kind of done it all. And there's people who maybe think, okay, AI is like taking over in this way where courses won't be of value anymore, or
I made a video. That's the last video I did. The
Yes.
thumbnail is kind of sarcastic, but it's the death of info products.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk a lot about that. But
Well, what would be the way you'd suggest approaching the decision around the first project or the first project that people could start building?
Well, the reason I recommend starting a personal brand so much, amongst the many other things you could do, is just because it's not low friction. I wouldn't even say it's low barrier of entry. It's just something accessible. It's something that you can start doing, start practicing, and you learn the skills that you need as you're doing the thing. The other thing there is a lot of people it's like, oh, I want to go and start an agency. I want to start an e-commerce brand. I maybe want to start this course or community. I want to start any kind of business. If you have a personal brand, then you're much more likely to make any of those work, right? If you have an audience of any size, you're much more likely to make any of those work. If you don't, if you just go straight into agency work, then I promise you're going to hate your life doing cold emails, cold outreach, cold DMs, so on and so forth. Like I really do try to think critically because I prescribe like start a personal brand so much. But no matter which way I look at it, at least for the beginner that doesn't know what they want to do, or someone who doesn't want to do too much meaningless work or work that they hate, I think it's a great option. I think it's at least worth trying. And it's free traffic. Like you don't have to worry about learning ads yet. And when it is time to learn ads, you've written so much content that you're probably going to be a lot better than most people who get into doing ads. So in terms of where to start, I would just start with like thinking about the brand you would want to follow. Think about if I were trying to craft this profile that looked like it had 100,000 followers, what would that look like? And then that starts to lead you down the path of looking at other accounts. What are they doing? How do I pull little things from each of them into my own that gives me this kind of unique edge? How do I add my own flair? And then you start to think about your bio, right? What are the topics that you're going to talk about? If you start looking, this is where you just start reverse engineering like crazy. You don't really need a course. They're very helpful. You can watch a few YouTube videos on it, but you're on social media every day. You know what works. Like you're watching it fly by you right now. Just like open your eyes and look, this thing has a good amount of engagement. Okay, what can I learn from this? Maybe it's not on a topic you want to talk about, but if you know nothing about this stuff, copy paste that tweet or Instagram post or whatever, throw it into Claude or ChatGPT and just be like, hey, break down why this worked. Mm-hmm. Very simple. You could go further and be like, break down the reader psychology behind it. Turn it into a template that then I can plug an idea into to practice my own writing. Hey, be a writing guide. I want you to take these 10 tweets that did really well, understand them, understand why they worked well, and then I'm going to give you ideas and you're going to help me write them line by line. And now you have like this teacher, right? And then eventually you get to the point where you can start to do it on your own. You start to notice ideas that could be turned into tweets. You start texting people like you're writing a tweet, like putting line breaks and all of these other things. So that's where I would start. And in terms of what to do next, you really just think of, okay, 1, what do I like writing about? 2, what has done well for me so far, if anything. If things haven't done well, that's another topic. Ask Claude, why isn't this working? But that's a lot bigger topic. I never really, there's a lot of advice in the space that is kind of like your audience will tell you what they want, but they never really did that for me. Mm-hmm. I've kind of learned over time that they know what they want, but they don't know what's the word? They know what they think they want, they don't know what would benefit them the most. So I'm here thinking, how can I create something that could just really benefit what is so useful that I know that can be put into some kind of product and given to another person? And if I don't have that, how can I start to create it? How can I start to experiment? Mm-hmm. That's a bit more abstract and like hard to do. So an example there is I've been trying very hard to get Claude to be able to just replace my writing. I have so many chats. I've fed it my books. I've had it break down 9 of my newsletters into voice analysis and writing guides. I've had it create hook libraries for me based on my past newsletters. I've had it, I've literally guided it for like 2 hours on, you wrote this, I would write it like this. You wrote this, I would write it like this. I've been doing that for like 3 months, and it's like, it's just still not there, because when I read something that is supposed to sound like me, I no longer want to write that thing. It's just like I would write it differently once I see it, because that's just the first iteration. But if the entire newsletter is just the first iteration and I have to rewrite the whole thing, then I'm thinking, why didn't I just write it myself in the first place? Right? So maybe it's because I have a higher standard for that thing, but I completely lost where are we?
Well, yeah, there's a bunch of topics going on here, but the topic of AI replacing writing is quite interesting, because if we're having a conversation while you're speaking, my mind is going to a lot of different places. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just calculating like an output that I'm going to respond with. So I'm in real time navigating this very complex inner terrain to then figure out what's relevant to respond with. So something is unique about us as humans that I think will keep us relevant personally to each other.
Yeah.
In all of that exercise of trying to get it to produce that kind of output, what have you come to think about how AI should be used effectively by writers and students and teachers?
Yeah. I can say for writers, at least right now, that AI is extremely useful when information is the goal, right? Research, asking it for some kind of information, making sure you double check it or push back on it if it's wrong. But it's good for gathering information very quick that you can then use to write, because how else do you write? You gather information from somewhere, but now you can get it when you need it. So that increases writing speed and efficiency to some extent. And if you push back and forth and have a conversation, then you can come to some very good ideas. Maybe Claude comes up with them, or maybe you come up with them in the process of the conversation. In terms of things that it can't replace yet, it's when you come into play. It's when your translation of the idea comes into play. It's when other people know that there is another consciousness on the other side of the screen, and they're not following it for the information specifically, but your interpretation of the information, right? When I watch one person on YouTube, I'm watching because I like who they are, and I feel like I'm going to get something interesting, right? 2 different people could create AI is going to take over the world videos, and I'd come away with a unique insight from both, and they would help shape my own, right? So that's kind of where I see it, is when the value lies in your point of view or your interpretation, that's where it comes into play. So when I'm writing a newsletter, there are just some ideas that I care about so much that I don't want the AI to touch them. There are other parts where maybe like a few paragraphs in a row where it's just purely informational. I need to get that across, and having AI draft it and me touching it up a tiny bit to remove the M dashes and other things to make it not sound like AI, that works, right? Because it's getting the point across, and according to my taste or judgment, that fits just fine. But until you've like really experienced this and have tried deeply to do it with Claude, I think it's hard to understand where the taste portion comes into play, because I tried really hard to get Claude to generate like a good newsletter for me. I've done it a few times. A few of them were good, but the most recent one where I was confident the entire time, like, this is going to be really good. I start reading through it and I'm like, every sentence just sounds wrong. I have to write the entire thing myself, that's normal. But it's like, now I see where it's coming into play. All the key points are here. There's really good ideas, but it's like, I can't get over the fact that it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sound like me. And now when I have them side by side, my draft and AI's draft, the difference is just vast.
Well, I think people should be encouraged by that. Like, I look at your brand and I think it's a very unique brand. It's recognizably you. And yet you draw from a lot of specific, not even actually that many. Like, if you look at the beginning of The Art of Focus, you list out like a primary set of concepts that you've sort of synthesized into your understanding of the art of focus. And one of those would be Flow, as you mentioned, by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Close, yeah.
So you take these very deep concepts. Well, actually, maybe we could break down Flow a little bit first and demonstrate what I'm about to ask you about. So a concept like Flow is about getting into a mode of consciousness that is quite useful and enjoyable. How do you build a life that's conducive to flow states? And how do you utilize different modes of focus to reverse or deal with psychic entropy?
Yes. I forget exactly how Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes how to do it, but the way that I've found it plays a role in my life is having a consistent contrast between like order and chaos. Because as Mihai Csikszentmihalyi would say, it's just order in consciousness. It's having a hierarchy of goals and executing on those things. It's like your mind is so clear from like macro vision for the future to task right here and now. Like, that's the tunnel. It's like North Star, and I'm working on the thing that leads to that North Star with a bit of challenge. So challenge skill ratio is to kind of kick into flow. Your skill needs to match the challenge of the situation. The challenge can't be too high or else you get anxious and just don't think you can do it. But the challenge can't be too low, because then you get bored and it's just not fun. And that's the case for most 9-to-5 jobs, I would say, is throughout childhood, you're continuously evolving and moving up a level. You're going to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. You're being introduced to novel and interesting things. Your mind is expanding, albeit within a narrow bubble of traditional education. But when you get into a job, it's like, okay, I have the skill to do this. There's a bit of training that I have to go through. I have to learn the ropes. And then once I get into the flow, it's like, now I'm just bored all the time, right? So that's a crucial distinction. It's not only about having this very clear focus toward this hierarchy of goals, but you need that challenge. And how do you get that challenge? How do you continue to increase the challenge and avoid just falling into this mechanical rut? That's where you have these periods of chaos just sprinkled in. Very creative periods, because that's when like all of these ideas are flying, but it's also when you could feel the worst and the most stressed. But that at least like resets the order in your life so that you have to create a new order. A new order has to emerge from that chaos of all of these novel things that you're learning. So the way that I like to think of this cycle, it goes through a few phases. When you're leveling up in life, so to say, you go into a dissonance phase, and then an uncertainty phase, and then a discovery phase. So once you've, I guess, completed the challenge of your current level, then you start to realize like, okay, I'm getting stuck in this rut. I've gotten my taste of this life. I don't really want to live it anymore. Not in the bad way. Kind of just like I've gotten
don't want to
enough.
stay the same.
Yeah. It's like, I get it. What's next? What am I doing with my life? And if you like stay if you stay in that life, you know that it's just going to get more and more repetitive and more like numbing to an extent. So once you reach the point of, okay, I know that I don't want to do this anymore, what's next? You enter the uncertainty phase, which is like, well, I don't know what to do. So what do I do? But even just recognizing that or having that awareness allows you to start noticing more opportunities that you can then discover what it is you want to try or experiment with. And then as you experiment with things and you start to invest more energy into them, they start to pull you more in. And then that's where the flow really starts to happen. And then if you ride that out into the next boring phase, that's a good amount of time where you can live this enjoyable life, or what some people would call like an obsessed life. So it's try everything until you find that one thing that you become obsessed with. And then you live this, like, you know that feeling. It's like me when I get into the gym for the first time, it's like, that's all my mind is thinking about, right? I have that order. All I'm thinking about is just like gym. Food fuels that. School is just a waste of time. Like I'm not even mentally in school.
Yeah, you kind of constantly finding out where the new edge is and then exploring what it means to push on that edge.
Yeah.
And that seems to be extremely enjoyable. Okay, so when you take those very deep concepts and you make them relevant to people clearly and concisely in your writing, that's a skill that challenges people. And something you point out sometimes is it's a problem when someone's trying to be too clever, like, I want to be all philosophical in a tweet. But the other side of that is, I don't want it to be like shallow or, not substantial. And so there's, I think, a resistance that people have to allowing themselves to use that more shallow end of the spectrum, or what you might call shallow. And that could even include talking about like fitness, like improving your physique or making more money. So how do you think about, in terms of producing content, the relationship between that supposedly more shallow topics or material and the depth? How do you bridge that?
I think a good way to do it is to reframe from like shallow and deep to beginner and advanced, because it's kind of what it is. You're just further ahead of people, right? It's not that you're necessarily, when you're going the more shallow route, it's not that you're trying to just become like a red pill self-improvement YouTuber and tell people to make money, get girls, and buy a fancy car. And I feel like we're kind of leaving that era, right? It's just not that interesting anymore because there's so much of it. People want something different. So It's the era of the deep thinkers, so to say. Maybe. Well, it's kind of always been evolving into that, especially as the internet's progressed. But how do I frame this? If you are very advanced to the point where you can think very deeply about a topic, you just have to have the awareness that other people aren't there. 95 to 99% of people on social media, it's just like average people. You wouldn't go to Walmart and just scream at the top of your lungs like a Marcus Aurelius quote from Meditations, even though most people would benefit from that to an extent. Like that's more accessible than what I see a lot of people trying to go into. So at least on social media, and maybe at the start of your long form content, you have to get very good at introducing people to the topic that you're trying to go deep on.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have to hook them in a very beginner level way. Provide examples. I think my biggest thing when I'm trying to articulate an idea is I'll write it down and then I'll look at it and I'll just be like this doesn't make sense yet. Like there's something that I can add or remove or change that would make this just hit that much harder. Like that's the creative problem for me, is how do I formulate something that just like slices through all the noise and goes straight into people's heads and makes sense. Not that I'm always the best at that, but that's like my guiding light is I know when something just isn't going to do that well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you develop that skill of being very critical of your own writing, which could turn on you, but just try to make it more accessible for now and see if you can do it without removing the impact. In fact, you're making the impact stronger.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that because I've got my interests in like Zen and these sort of abstract things. And when I thought of the newsletter title, The Unblocked Carver, that was from doing an exercise you suggested about bridging laying all your interests out and seeing where these convergence points are. And so it made sense. Oh, I can talk about just art and creating, the creative process, and I can weave in some of that deeper stuff. But really it's like, oh, how do you find more creative power to pursue your art, pursue what's meaningful?
Yeah. The other thing is there's just so many people now that like you have to have some kind of unique edge where I see people that try to like sound like Alan Watts as an example, who I love listening to, but it's different when it comes from Alan Watts because he's like the pioneer.
Now there's all these AI Alan Watts on YouTube
Yeah.
and they're horrible.
Yeah. So it's like I know you can have this deep, profound thought. I get it. And it's a good, deep, profound thought, but there's more to the formula if you want to do this thing. Like you have to just think about the market. You need to think about a bunch of different archetypes of readers that could be reading this and whether or not they see it as valuable. Just because they like Alan Watts doesn't mean that they're going to like your writing as much because you're not Alan Watts. Like you don't have that reputation. So there's just various things you need to pay attention to when writing because it's not all about just like something that sounds very nice and poetic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel very called out, but we'll get
that
those. No, it's good. A lot of your stuff makes me feel called out, and it's necessary.
That
The
may
harsh
be,
truths.
That may be one thing, yeah. People, I like that stuff. That's usually why I write that stuff is I like it when I get the harsh truth.
Yep. So people have also responded quite well to you writing about topics like spiral dynamics and ego development theory, which are pretty deep, profound concepts. And could we dive a little bit into ego development and why ego development makes sense as opposed to sort of this? There's sort of these spiritual teachings that maybe you're supposed to get rid of your ego, or people interpret it that way.
Yeah. That's like the fortune cookie style of it, right? Is I don't know, you like read one article on spirituality and then you make it your entire identity. And since it said that the ego is the enemy, or you saw the book title, Ego is the Enemy, and you're like, oh, we need to get rid of that. We need to kill the ego. But when I came across spiral dynamics or the ego development theory, or there's many, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is kind of sort of one, developmental psychology to an extent, it made me realize like, oh, the ego isn't something that you're trying to like make smaller. It's something that you're trying to grow. It's like the smaller it is, the more narrow it is, the less optionality and nuance it has. It's the more you expand it, the more complex it becomes, the more understanding you have of situations, the better your life is to an extent. So you're kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So even in the topic of like developing agency, if you're trying to like get rid of your ego, that's probably cornering yourself in a way rather than getting that wider understanding and comprehension and letting your identity become more inclusive of reality. So I found that quite useful. But
yeah, I'll add on one point, not on the actual theory, but I feel like the reason I could make that work is in content, there's like packaging and what's in the actual package. So on the video, there's the title and thumbnail. On the newsletter, there's the headline. And I would say that the hook is part of the packaging also. But then there's the deliverable. And what's inside of it and whether or not the two make sense together. So when I talked about spiral dynamics, I had a video that did really well that was on like how to become more intelligent, which people resonate well with because that's a desire. It's like, oh, I can become smarter. You know, that's what I want to become smarter. But they start listening to it. And I talk about the difference between being smart and intelligent, kind of like my own definition of those things. And eventually I get into like the reason I wanted to write that is because ego development theory gave me a different view on intelligence itself, because someone can be 140 IQ, but how does that look across the different stages of development? And so I work that in, and people liked it because since they were so engaged with the topic already, they were ready to receive something like profound and insightful. That's why they were watching it. So maybe that helps to some extent, is if you want to talk about something super deep and profound, wrap it in something that people actually want to open.
Yep. Yeah. So one thing that people who are creators would want is to learn how to sell what they're offering and how to persuade. Once they're over the hurdle of thinking persuasion is bad, you can persuade people to improve their lives. And you've kind of synthesized some of these different models of human development, developmental psychology, and you've called your model Human 3.0, which draws from spiral dynamics, Ken Wilber's integral theory, many things. You also talk about Daniel Schmachtenberger's work on the meta crisis.
Yep.
And he breaks down the kind of fundamental drivers of these various crises that humanity is quite concerned about now, because we're in the thick of it. We've got some work to do.
Yeah.
How would understanding, I've kind of merged two questions by accident, but how could we understand persuasion more effectively by learning what we can learn from what you outline in Human 3.0?
It's an interesting question.
Maybe kind of a tough one.
Yeah. Well, let's say this, the higher you go, the more you can see. So if you develop yourself through these stages that increase the complexity of your mind, or just open you up more to, I guess if we haven't even described the stages, but if we think of like level 1, that's just like pure black and white. That's narrow-minded, conformist, extremely like, this is law. Then you go to the very top and it's like, there's no limits. There's none of that. It's like the most complex, I guess you should say, but like making sense of the complex there is. You hear this crazy thinker who can bounce between every different topic imaginable and bridge them all into this profound insight. That's what we're talking about without getting limited. Like they can talk about all of these different things, from politics to the economy to whatever, to religion, without getting locked into one paradigm and make sense of it all. And so the closer you are to that, the more you have at your disposal, the more perspectives you have from those middle layers, because you've gone through them as well. If you are at this level 1 to level 3 or a lower level, then those are the only tools you have in your tool belt. And you can only sell to or persuade to levels 1 to 3. Otherwise, you're kind of like duping the higher levels into coming down to your level to an extent. So the more you develop yourself and your mind, the more you can benefit other people and the more you can persuade them of that benefit, because you understand where they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can actually understand their perspective, their vantage point. Leo Gura of actualize.org, you draw from quite a bit. And he has a very successful brand. And he goes very deep. Like he has 3-hour talks on some esoteric spiritual topic. and then he'll have some video like about how to make more money and how to
get laid.
how to get laid, right? So it's all, it's to be able to go up to those higher levels of perspective and then be okay with speaking to people where they're at, not trying to be seen for where you're at, seems to be part of it.
Yeah.
Let's change course a little bit. You've become pretty famous at this point. You're like a public figure.
You're famous
at this point. So
micro celeb.
and you'll keep growing. You've gone from one person business model to also building 2 companies, which I'd like to talk to you about. But what have been some of the costs or hardships of becoming so known? Is there anything that's been really difficult about that?
I mean, aside from the point where I kind of had a client turn it stalker and have like 20 different phone numbers sending me death threats, that was weird. So I had to move and get a new phone.
Oh,
but I don't know. That's over. So what can you say?
Luckily, not too many of those people.
Yeah. But aside from that, that doesn't happen frequently, by the way. If it was, I would probably be much more quiet.
Yeah.
The hardships are like, to me, is like the responsibility, because you're connected with so many people and you're teaching / helping so many people.
Influencing.
Yeah. And influencing, exactly. And to me, like, I want to make sure that I'm doing something that doesn't hurt people. And I don't mean like physical harm. I mean, like, I want to provide accurate, good ideas that actually have a profound change. I don't want to be a person who just tries to get a reaction out of people or rage baits people for the sake of engagement. It's like, I want to play the game of doing something meaningful, but also making it work. So I don't know if I'd call that a hardship, but it's kind of like a part of the journey.
There's some pressure involved.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of ties nicely to this topic that the meta crisis brings up. One of the main drivers, there's 3 main drivers, right? Or he calls them generator functions.
Yeah.
So there's accelerating technology, of course. People are concerned about that. Then there's also rivalrous dynamics, and there's substrate consumption. So what came to mind now is being under that pressure, having a lot of influence on social media. There is the attention economy, which is kind of about harvesting people's attention, and it can be used to benefit people, and it can be used just to profit.
Yeah.
So what's the substrate? The substrate consumption as a problem. My imagination says it's attention, like we're over harvesting attention.
Yeah.
And not regenerating.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's in agriculture, it's like the soil. The whole regenerative soil / agriculture has become more of a thing lately to help with this problem, because people have noticed it becoming a thing. I'm not an expert on that by any means. That's why I focus on the social media stuff. But the soil can't regenerate fast enough for what we want to get out of it, right? The same thing is true for our mind in social media. Is we give our attention so freely to social media and these companies. We don't curate it. We don't prioritize where it goes. And like, we don't have enough time for it to recoup. And I'm sure there's downstream effects of that, but that's the gist of it, is like, if you're just constantly drained of like attention, then your creativity suffers, your ability to think suffers. It all gets clogged and clouded. And one big thing is that there is a difference between like entropic and centropic content. And I preferably want to be on the centropic side. So you think of scrolling memes all the time, or on social media, you see 100 different ideas across all different domains. Like, you're just shooting chaos into your mind. It's like, if your mind was a hotel for 5 people and you have 5,000 trying to occupy the rooms, that's really not going to work out in your favor. But on the Centropic side, you're going for like longer form. You're allowing people to invest attention in one thing for a longer amount of time, be it like a newsletter or a YouTube video or multiple tweets on a topic that connects to an overarching mission or reading a book or something of that nature. So that's kind of the side that I want to be on. And I believe that if more creators were to realize that and start to pivot toward that, they would be playing their role in, I guess, saving humanity in Daniel Schmachtenberger's case and preventing it from avoiding crisis, right? Like we don't see that our actions could do that to any scale. But if more people do it, aligned, this is why it like all ties into a philosophy of work less, earn more, enjoy life. Everything that we've talked about, it's all connected in some way. And that's kind of this meta crisis can give some form of meaning to what we're doing.
Yeah, that's beautiful because people generally want to contribute to something of benefit.
Yeah.
Some people who have studied your work closely who I'm in contact with, like Dan Goldfield, it's very much about teaching people about spirituality and finding peace. And he's done quite well at that. And he uses the tools that you teach. And I think, like you said earlier, there is an increasing hunger for the deeper stuff. So it's going to be less about hooking people with the Lamborghini and a little bit more, not quite trying to say, hey, raise your consciousness, but something maybe in between now is more captivating to more people. Yeah, so that's exciting. I mean,
well, I think it's a good sign because the reason like that tends to do well across the board is because people haven't gotten to the point where they're secure in their own lives and their future, right? Some need wasn't met there. So they see the Lamborghini and they're kind of duped into thinking that that's what they want. And then that, like, in contrast to where they are now, they're behind. So as we continue to develop as a society and the baseline continues to increase, then we see less of that because our desires change according to, I guess, the structure of our mind.
Yeah, and our place in life. Like if I can't afford gas, you can't spend that much time thinking, like meditating or whatever, pursuing higher development. So now you're producing something much bigger than you could have when you started. You're CEO of a software company. You're building Eden, and also Sonder. So let's talk about Eden. What was the shift that took place for you personally, going to managing a team and upping to that level? What's that been like? And what is Eden?
Yeah. Eden is the evolution of Cortex. Cortex is a long story, but it's a workspace where you have all of your knowledge in one place and you can reference or chat with any of that with AI. But the special thing here is that all of the files that you put in, so think of it as like file storage, PDFs, videos, images, even YouTube links where it downloads, transcribes the video, any social media link, Substack links get turned into like notes or documents. All of that is transcribed and auto-tagged in your workspace so you can easily find and search things without organizing it. You can organize it hierarchically, but you can also search for one-person business. And then if you have my videos in there, or if I have all of my video files that I work with my editor on, I can find very specific parts in those videos by frame or by transcript match. And we have a Canvas feature, which is kind of like the projects feature where you can throw any of those files onto a canvas. So say me and my editor are working on a video, we have the footage in the canvas, we have various prompts for AI, we have the script for the video, we can connect various things to AI chats to just like work in one space with those things. That's it.
Well, it's pretty sweet. I've been using it, and to be able to map out so many different parts of my knowledge base in a visual field and then chat with more than one AI chat about it simultaneously.
You'll like the projects feature that's coming soon.
Okay.
It'll make Canvas a lot easier to navigate.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Well, this is exciting. And another larger scale project that I decided to take on that you decided to be part of is doing a convention, an in-person event. I started thinking, I think there's an increasing hunger for that as well. In navigating this shifting terrain, what is the future of the creator economy? I think more and more people would benefit from seeing all these social profile icons eye to eye and actually meeting each other in a shared space and hearing from each other, asking questions in a group setting like that. And this was partly inspired because you told me a year ago, part of succeeding in social media is it's going to help you to inject yourself into a tribe. And so I started,
one of the few that took that seriously.
I took it very seriously.
Good.
I started the podcast, and one of the people I reached out to, Hussein Ibarra, has also learned a lot from you, been very successful writing threads. He said, oh, sure, I'll be on your podcast, but also, do you want to become part of this little group I'm forming? And so a small group of writers started meeting weekly. And like 3 or 4 weeks in, it felt like a lot happened very fast. Like only like 4 weeks in, I said, I think it'd be cool to do a convention. If we could get Dan and some of these others to come speak. And everyone thought that could be pretty cool. That would be. And so then I'm like,
going to do it? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been to lots of conferences back in my performance days. There's the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference where I first met Dennis McKenna and others, and lots of conferences, and they've been of immense value to me. So I thought, I'm just going to reach out to Dan and some others. Reached out to Dan Goldfield, Brian Meyerhofer, and immediately things just started happening kind of weirdly, synchronously, And that was like a little nudge to me, like, yes, go do this.
It's a kind of a good point there where I think someone says like, build it and they will come. I actually don't think Naval said that. But there's a caveat to that where it's not build it and they will come. It's build it and try to get people to come. And they'll probably be much more likely to come because it's like you're doing it. You're not just telling people you're going to do it because everyone gets that pitch.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Or whatever it is. It's like, dude, build it and then I'll try it and see if it's valuable.
Yeah.
But it's the same story there.
Yes. So in this case, we have a venue booked that has capacity for over 600 people in Vancouver, Canada. And I think it's going to be amazing. There'll be you, Kieran Drew, another very big online writer. He went from being a dentist to making over $1 million in a year writing on the internet. A long list of other incredible speakers. Jack Moses, Hussein Ibarra, Kimi Honora, Brian Meyerhofer. I'm about to go visit both of them, and we'll keep on talking about this thing we're building. But what do you think? Why did it speak to you? Like when I mentioned to you, I'm going to do a convention, would you come speak at it? How is it relevant to your vision?
The convention itself is just relevant because I like the people that are going to it, right? So that's a good thing, is to finally meet the people that I've worked with for so long in person, like Dan Goldfield, Brian Meyerhofer. Like I worked for them for a year plus on end, especially Dan Goldfield. And it's like we haven't met in person, and that alone would be really fun.
Yeah.
But also having people there that would... It's like I get to get my friend group and be able to teach what we know to, like, I guess the next generation, so to say.
Yeah.
Seems like a very fun thing to do. And I haven't always wanted to get into public speaking, but I know that I have to start at some point because it's like a skill that I want to develop, but I'm scared to. So I need to do it. And I'm going to be like embarrassed up there. Dude.
Everybody's so scared.
Oh yeah. I'm going to be like
scared
stuttering. I'm going to be, yeah. Really be fun. Either way. The other thing is like, I like the group you're a part of because you guys actually do things. That sounds mean, but like you guys have actually just taken things, ran with it, and seen some form of success. So when you came to me and asked like, hey, will you be a part of this? It's like, well, it's going to happen and it's going to be good. So yeah, I'll be there.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you being part of it was part of what lit the fire for me to say, okay, like I'll really go all in on this. And it's beyond me. Like it's demanding more of me than was there at the beginning.
Right.
It's demanding that I develop myself quite a bit. And yeah, I can't wait to see all the impact that it has for people and just to hang out with such cool people in person. So in regard to people actually getting started as creators, writing and trying to figure out what to offer people, how can they figure out what awareness they're missing if they're, other than asking Claude, if they're not getting traction? You know, no one's really liking their posts. No one's buying their offers. How do they start to even understand what's going wrong here? What should I build?
Yeah. I mean, on social media itself, like if you're not getting traction, you really have to think like, how does this work, right? How do I find ideas on the internet? And when I was starting out, it's like I knew that on Twitter specifically, like there was no algorithm. If you post, it's not being seen unless your friends are following you, but that's a manual connection that you made. So that's one thing, manual connection. How do you do that? You build your tribe. You reply to people. First, you find by just exploring and finding people, clicking on people's posts, going to their account, seeing who they retweet, seeing who they follow, eventually getting an algorithm where you're getting ideas from people that you would want to join or be a part of. And then you start replying to them, giving them a sense of who you are in their replies. Depending on how large they are and whether or not you think that they would respond to DMs, you DM them, you provide some kind of value there. This is where I'd say ask Claude, because I would have to, in order to like teach how to do that, it's like a video's worth of information or a newsletter's worth. So ask Claude, how would you do this without sounding corporate or cringe? How would you actually get a response?
Yeah.
What are the social skills required? And then from there, you start to form this tribe. And just by talking to them, they're going to start liking your content because they're going to see it on their page. You may get some traction from that. You may not get thrown into the algorithm just yet, but then you can kind of strategize in your own little syndicate that like you guys sharing each other's posts definitely helps you gain traction to some extent. Yeah. Beyond that, you can get people on a podcast and become their friend to an extent, and then they're more likely to help you for obvious reasons. There's just a lot of little manual things that you can do that are outside of the algorithm, which is what most people are competing for, that allow you to get in front of other people's audiences.
Yeah. That very well describes the things that have gone well for me so far. So appreciate that.
Yeah.
It works. Yeah. Genuinely just connecting with people. The same social skills that apply offline often apply online. So,
yep.
Well, to wrap up, whose writing interests you most right now and why?
I feel he's kind of gone ghost for a few weeks and a few months on Substack, but Devin Erickson, I really liked his book, Theft of Fire. We had a good podcast on my channel. The second, I'm assuming that he's just going hard on the second book and getting it tidied up. But second book is going out soon. But he was like on a roll on Substack. Like some of the, maybe not greatest, but really good newsletter / articles that I enjoyed reading. And then he just stopped because he has other things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But his tweets too, like when he would quote tweet something viral and just give like this brutal take of really clear thinking, I really like that. So Devin Erickson, Thomas Sewell, who's like he's an economist of sorts. I'm still learning about him. He learned from Milton Friedman, and I just don't know anything about economics. And he seems like a very clear thinker that I could learn from. So I'm slowly diving into his work.
Cool. I'm excited to hear the results of that exploration. So,
big books.
Yeah. Maybe we can close on, you have said this kind of very simple quote, nothing happens, then everything happens. Mm-hmm. So that, it means that there's a lot of pushing through things not working for and being consistent before then there's these tipping points that happen, right? Suddenly you have these breakthroughs, insights, and successes. How did it feel for you when that started happening, when real momentum, took off? What was that like? Maybe also, what was an exciting purchase that you made for yourself when money came around?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The feeling was like, finally, like I've been doing this for long enough. It was bound to happen. Like, geez, yeah, finally. But I felt more motivated. Like, I guess nothing really changed aside from like, we need to keep this up now and lean into it. And now I really know what I should lean into more, at least for the next like 6 months is how long I was on that stint. Honestly, it feels validating. That's for sure. It's like people actually showing up to watch. It's like finally, like you get that one idea that just pops. Mm-hmm. Interesting things I've bought. I like cars. Cars are cool.
Yeah.
I haven't really, I've like traded in and out of a few cars. Aside from that, I wear the same crap every day. Just black shirt, shorts. Yeah.
You've ended up pouring a lot more money into just higher level goals.
Yeah,
instead.
Absolutely.
Doing more cool stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, this was super fun, man.
It was fun.
Yeah. Excited for all the future conversations and everything to come. So that's all for today. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Mr. Ko.
Yep. Thank you.
This was episode 17 of the Unblocked Creators Podcast. The links are in the show notes for the Future Proof Creator Summit in Vancouver, as well as for Dan Ko's newsletter. Until next time, I'm Jesse James Carver.